Well, I originally wanted to have this video up on Saturday night, but ca things kinda happened, life kinda got in the way, and I ended up watching the Royal Rumble over at a friend's house last night, and I just got done watching Raw tonight, which really wasn't much to talk about. I'm not here to review that. I am here to review the results of my Twitter poll. I had a Twitter poll up for a couple days asking which Royal Rumble from the past would you like to see me review? I had my four choices: the 1992 Royal Rumble, which was won by the Nature Boy Ric Flair; the 99 Royal Rumble, which was won by Mr. McMahon; the 2004 Royal Rumble, which was won by the Invisible Man; or the 2014 Royal Rumble, which was won by Batista. And lo and behold, the 2004 one won. This one was held at the Wachovia Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the Royal Rumble itself, it's one of my favorite times of the year because you get a lot of different things that happen. Well, like in this day and age, you can get returns from injury, and then you get debuts. Sometimes you get debuts on the main roster, or you get some debuts or you get call-ups from NXT and things like that. But this was really a two-match card, which I'll get to after later. But the show itself kicked off with a tables match for the World Tag Team Championship. Two members of Evolution, Ric Flair and Batista, defending against the Dudley Boys. Now, you would figure that, the match is in Philadelphia, where Dudley Boys made their name in ECW, and as a tables match. So you'd think, the Dudley Boys would have the edge here, right? No, not so much. Batista and Ric Flair come out there. Batista basically goes for the cheap heat, ripping on the Eagles. At this time, they had lost 3 NFC Championship games in a row, so, well, they deserve to get ripped on. But really, then you got Jonathan Coachman, who was kind of the Raw GM at the time, trying to run interference later on in the match. But really, this match itself wasn't much to write home about, but really what it did is that it made Batista out to be this monster heel, and he ends up getting the victory for him and Ric Flair in Evolution by putting Devon through the table. And it's kind of what you expected. They're building up Batista to be this monster heel, and over the full year of 2004, that's kind of what they're doing. They were building up for him to win the Royal Rumble the following year, and building up to his ascension into being the World Heavyweight Champion at that Wrestlemania. But that's basically what this match was about. Match was less than 10 minutes, and that's about it for that. And then you had the Cruiserweight Championship match. It was Rey Mysterio defending it against Jamie Noble, along with Nydia. And at the time, Nydia was doing this blind woman gimmick, and Jamie Noble taking advantage of her. And this match this match didn't last that much longer than the tables match, but it was just, well, match wasn't much to write home about. Nydia would seem to inadvertently trip Noble, which caused Ray to get the victory, and he retained the title. Then next up, you had excuse me. You had Eddie Guerrero against Chavo Guerrero Jr., along with his father in his corner. Eddie Guerrero and Chavo Guerrero Jr., they were the team of Los Guerreros. They were the They were the WWE Tag Team Champions at the time. They had lost the title, and Chavo blamed Eddie, and then it led to Chavo turning on Eddie, and they had lost to the Basham Brothers and Shaniqua. You remember that? You remember that team and Shaniqua? I know the Shug Daddy does. I know he remembers Shaniqua, but Eddie more or less tried to keep it a wrestling match. I mean, they were trying to tell a story where Chavo was being the antagonist, and Eddie didn't want to throw a punch against his own nephew, or although they were really more like brothers just because they were so close in age. But he was not going for the joking at the time, but Eddie ends up getting the victory. But after this, that's when the beatdown began. Chavo Sr. gets tied to the bottom rope with his own tie, and Eddie just proceeds to piss pound Chavo Jr. into oblivion. And this would eventually lead into No Way Out, where Eddie Guerrero wins the WWE title from Brock Lesnar. But I'll talk more about Brock Lesnar here in a bit. But Josh Matthews is talking to Benoit, or should I say, the Invisible Man. He gets put into the Royal Rumble #1 due to, at the time, the SmackDown GM Paul Heyman put him into that position. And that's something I'll allude to more so later on here. But then you had the WWE Championship match. Brock Lesnar defending against Hardcore Holly. And to think that Hardcore Holly's getting a world title shot at a Big Four pay-per-view. Well, normally that would be... I mean, it's still an odd thing in general looking back at it 17 years later, but at least you had some story going into this. It was back in 2002. He wrestled Hardcore Holly, and Brock Lesnar did, and ended up breaking his neck. So I don't know I can't remember if it was like a botched powerbomb, what it was, but Holly was on the shelf for over a year, but just to think, like I said, just Hardcore Holly getting a world title shot at a Big Four pay-per-view, it was just odd. I mean, yeah, he got his licks in there, but you didn't really ever think real seriously that Holly was going to take the strap off of Brock Lesnar. But I mean, yeah, he got a few looks in, but Lesnar ends up winning, and it really wasn't that close. To be perfectly honest. And this was back at a time when Lesnar had a more diverse moveset than what he's used in the past few years. I mean, he wasn't just taking opponents to Suplex City. But anyway, then he got the two matches that were really that this whole Royal Rumble card was about. You had a last man standing match for the World Heavyweight Championship. You got Triple H defending against former DX stablemate Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid. But this is back in a time when Triple H's reign of terror. I mean, it was in full effect right here. But this match was actually very good, and it was very bloody. I mean, you just don't see matches like this anymore. I mean, Michaels has proven his mettle time and time again. Yeah, of course, you had the good storytelling in this. Michaels had just come back off from like a 4-year absence after retiring due to having a bad back. He'd been gone from like WrestleMania 1998 and up until SummerSlam of 2002 when he made his triumphant return. But this match went up about 30 minutes. And concussions be damned, but because this was still a time when they were still blasting each other in the head with steel chairs. but God, and the match ended up being a draw. Both men bled like a couple of stuck pigs, and both men, neither one could make the 10 count, and so therefore you had a draw, and still your world heavyweight champion, ugh, Triple H, ugh. So then, before you got to the Royal Rumble itself, you had this kind of debate of sorts. Eric Bischoff's coming out there, and then Paul Heyman comes out there, and they start having their little cat fight of sorts, and then you got Stone Cold coming out there. He was the sheriff of Monday Night Raw, or WWE, but really he was just on Monday Night Raw, coming out there on his ATV, and then blah blah blah, and both Bischoff first gets a stunner, and then Austin, who was once a Paul Heyman guy back in the day in WCW with the Dangerous Alliance. They start to share beer and hail. He gets a stunner too. But then, all right, then you get to the Royal Rumble match itself. One thing that was good about this particular Royal Rumble, you had many different storylines being intertwined here. You had the Invisible Man, Chris Benoit, getting stuck into the match number 1 overall and having to run the gauntlet. Then you also had Randy Orton and Mick Foley there. He had his issue where, I mean, he even had JR thinking that Mick Foley had just become a coward. There's an empty seat in the front row that was reserved for him. He had not shown up, Then you had Kane and the Undertaker. Undertaker's gong goes off a little bit after Kane gets into the ring, and they were at that time they were doing that transitioning from Taker being the American Badass going back into the Dead Man character, and Kane being all freaked out and that kind of thing. Test was actually supposed to be number 21 in the Rumble, but he ends up getting attacked by Foley in the back room, in the backstage area, and Foley ends up coming out there and going after Orton. Orton looked like he's seen a ghost after he heard the music, and yeah, they were fighting all the way out through the outside and that kind of thing, and I mean, yeah, Foley took a couple of good shots to the head, too. It's like I said earlier, concussions be damned, I tell you what. But you also had Big Show and John Cena there. I mean, they had their little issue there at the time. That ended up going into WrestleMania, where John Cena he won his first singles title in WWE, defeating Big Show for the U.S. title and that kind of thing. You still have the Michaels and Triple H rivalry. That kind of went into WrestleMania itself, although neither man could be in the Royal Rumble. But basically what it came down to is, you had Benoit and the Big Show coming in at number 24, and yeah, those two at the very end. Benoit ends up pulling out Big Show with a front face lock. He ends up toppling the Giant, and there you go. Chris Benoit, the Invincible Man, wins the 2004 Royal Rumble. So it was actually outside of the Rumble match itself and the and the Triple H Michaels Last Man Standing match. It wasn't all that great of a card, but it was just some of the things that got built up during the Rumble match itself, which took us on the road to WrestleMania, and that's about what you had. So anyway, this is Marvelous Mark. I've got my 2004 Royal Rumble review now in the bag, and let me know what retro review you'd like to see next from me. I'll have something on my Twitter. Maybe by next weekend, and then we can just go from there. Until then, so long.